All right, all praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High God, the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and peace to you in the name of His Son Jesus. I count it truly a blessing each and every single time that I can come before to preach the Word of God, and kind of that's a light thing to do so. And today I want to answer a question um, that came today, as a matter of fact. And the question was, I appreciate your video on the false teaching. Now, this is concerning a video I did some time ago on the rapture. And the question is, can you tell me if you think you entered the 3.5 years of tribulation yet? Then it says something I don't understand. I know that Christians were persecuted through the ages. Why are there so many promises of God's help if He really doesn't help us? Well, okay, peace to you, Brother Lawson. It's good to see that. Okay, so first off, this is not, we haven't entered into great tribulation yet. Okay, so let's go to Matthew, the 24th chapter, and we'll pick it up in verse 3, and we can find out when we're going to have great tribulation here on this earth. This is Matthew 24 in the 3rd chapter. It reads as follows. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Okay, so what happened here was they showed him the temple and the buildings of the temple. He told them that, verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. So that's what they wanted insight into. They wanted to know when that was going to take place. Okay, but so the destruction of the temple happened in 70 AD. But notice the question that they asked also was, and what shall be the sign of that coming of the end of the world? Okay, see, something has to happen right before he comes, and we'll look at this. So he says in verse 4, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Peace to you, Brother Khalil. It's good to see you there, brother. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. So you'll see these things. Then he says something else. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. All right. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall arise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So some things have to take place. We talked about famines, pestilence, earthquake, and disease, and earthquakes in diverse places. He talked about the persecution. He talked about the preaching of the gospel. Now the gospel has been preached, right? But then he says something else. Because remember, the question was, what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So he says, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Okay? So now what is that talking about? Something's going to happen before he returns. Let's find out what this is about. Let's hold our finger here, because we'll come right back here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to 2 Thessalonians. Peace to you, Brother Marcus. It's good to see you there, brother. We're going to pick it up in 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter. And here, the congregation at Thessalonica, they were also concerned about the coming of the Messiah. And he tells them that something has to happen first. Let's see what he says. This is 2 Thessalonians 2 and verse 1. He says, Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by letter, nor by word, nor by letter asked from us, as that the day of Christ is at hand. Okay, so he's saying, don't be anxiety filled concerning the return of Christ, because something has to take place first. He said, Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. So before he returns, the man of sin has to be revealed. Okay. Now, We read in Matthew 24th chapter, the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. That's the man of sin. But let's keep reading. It said, who opposes, this is what this man is going to do, who opposes and exalted himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped. Listen to this very carefully. So that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. That has to take place before he returns. So what is that telling you? Before he returns, this man of sin has to stand in the temple. And we understand, as he told him, the temple is going to be destroyed. See, the temple is going to be rebuilt, brothers and sisters. There'll be the third temple. And this man of sin, the son of perdition, is going to stand in the temple. Okay? And then he says, going back to Matthew the 24th chapter in verse 16. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains, right? So they should have fled in 70 AD, but it's also time to flee into the wilderness when this abomination of desolation is on the scene. Why? Verse 21. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no ever shall be. There was tribulation when they were invaded by the Romans. Yes, that was a terrible time, but he's talking about the tribulation, the hour of temptation that's coming upon this earth just prior to its coming. So the question was, are we in the 3.5 year period now? No, absolutely not, because no temple has been built. The abomination of desolation is not in the temple. So no, you're not in great tribulation now. No, you're not in great tribulation now at all. Again, that's the sign. Because if you think about the other signs, some of these things have taken place. We know that the gospel was preached. You look at the first century, right? The gospel was preached when it was preached unto the other nations. Even that was the Great Commission that was given. But understand, the man of sin has not manifested himself yet as far as being in that temple. And the temple has to be built. It's not a coincidence that you have these efforts that have been going on for years to build a temple in Jerusalem. Okay? They have everything they need. They have their so-called Kohani, which is their priest. They have all the instruments of sacrifice. They have everything they need to build a temple. All they need is political opportunity. Okay? So, just to answer that question, no, we are not in the 3.5 year period yet. Again, it doesn't start until the man of sin is in the temple. Okay, he's going to be in there for 3.5. The Great Tribulation is 3.5 years. Times in the dividing of times, 1,260 days, 40 and 2 months. And then what's going to happen after the Great Tribulation? Verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give a light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Remember, they asked him, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Right? So he answered the question about his coming. He's coming immediately after Great Tribulation. Okay, that's the sign that you always see concerning the return of Christ. Just to show you, that's the sign. Hold our finger here, and we can read it because it's all over the Bible that's the sign. I just want to point that out. Peace to you in Israel, MC Israel, Brother Anthony, Sister Mary, peace to you. Let's pick it up in Joel, the 3rd chapter, in verse 14. He says, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. The Lord also shall roar out of Zion, and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake. But the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. Peace to you, Brother Isaiah. It's good to see you there. So that's the sign that you see. So we're talking about the same time when he returns. And that's, again, you see that sign consistently. Okay. So Understand that. This is Isaiah the 13th chapter. Verse 9, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate. And he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his goings forth, and the moon shall not cause the light to shine. That's referring to this same time that we're reading about. Now, the other part of your question was, why there's so many promises of his help if he's not going to help us? And what people fail to understand is that some of the things that it's easy to ignore some of the things that Jesus said, because quite frankly, you want to follow him, it comes with a cost. Okay? He's telling you to endure. That's the thing. He can deliver you, even if you die, he can deliver you from death. But you have to endure unto the end. That's who's going to gain salvation. Okay? See, help doesn't necessarily come in the way in which you think. Help can come in strength to endure. Even Jesus himself didn't want to die. And he prayed, oh, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. That's what he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, and kept praying it, and was strengthened, and was able to be obedient even unto death, which is what we should do. That's a kind of a misconception. Yes, he's talking about help, but understand, he raised him from the dead. If we stay the course, he will do the same for us. This is Matthew, the 10th chapter. Notice what he says here. This is Matthew, the 10th chapter, and verse 24. He said, the disciple is not above his master, nor the servant above his Lord. It is enough for the disciple to be as his master, and the servant as his Lord. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more shall they call them of his household? Then he goes on to talk about the division, right, that comes. See, this is a cost of discipleship. And he talks about the division. And he says in verse 34, think that I have come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foe shall be there of his own household. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me. A cross is a death tool, brothers and sisters. The cross is what they nailed you to. The cross meant excruciating pain and anguish and death. He told you to pick up your cross. See, again, there's a misconception where oftentimes people read what they want to read. Peace to you, Sister Miriam. So it said, he that findeth his life shall lose it. And he that loseth his life for my sake shall find it. You understand? Let's go to another place. Let's see something that Paul said. It's not that he won't help us. It's not that he can't deliver us. But we have to be obedient. This is 2 Timothy. This is a second epistle to Timothy that Paul wrote. Listen to what he said in chapter 3 and verse 10. He says, but thou hast fully known my doctrine, manner of life, purpose, faith, long-suffering, charity, patience. So you know these things about me. You know how I've walked. But then he says something else. Persecutions, afflictions, which came unto me at Antioch, at Iconium, at Lystra. What persecutions I endured, but out of them all the Lord delivered me. See, when people oftentimes when they quote, I can do all things in Christ who strengthened me, they act like, yeah, I can get this new car through Christ. Or I can pass this class. I mean, he's really talking about being obedient and doing the will of God, even though you're up against it. Okay? So now, he talked about what he endured. And even Paul was, if you read the account in Acts, in the 13th and the 14th chapters of Acts, you read where he went to Iconium, or Antioch, Iconium, and Lystra, and ended up being stoned and left for dead. He You read accounts of how he lived. He was shipwrecked. He was imprisoned. He was writing some of these epistles from prison. He was beaten, rejected. Then he says something in verse 12. Yea, and all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. See, so that's, when you say, well, where all these promises of help, if he's not going to help us, what you need to do is be girded in your faith. It comes with a cost. It's not just that you're just going to have it all and not going to have to give up anything. No, it comes with a cost. So keep that in mind when you say you're going to serve the Most High, when you're going to serve the Lord, because that's what happens. Let's go to one more place. Let's go to one more place. This is peace to you, brother. This is Matthew the 13th chapter. And here he gives this parable of the sower, of the seeds. He talks about how the word of God is the seed, and how it falls on different grounds, meaning it different people react differently. People act differently to the word. And he says in one particular place, he says in Matthew 13 and verse 20, he says, but he that receives seed into stony places, the same is he that heareth the word and anon with joy receiveth it. Okay, so the one that receives the seed, like he likens it to a husbandman or a farmer, he's throwing seed, and some of the seed lands in stony places. Okay, but in the stony places where it didn't have enough earth, so it didn't have enough dirt, it didn't sink down and get enough to get rooted. Immediately, what happens? Immediately it grows up. But then what happens, because it didn't have deepness of earth, the sun scorches it. Okay? He's like, people receive the word in a similar way. He says in verse 20 again, but he that received the seed into stony places, the same as he that heareth the word and anon, or anon means immediately. Anon with joy receiveth it. You so happy that you have the word, but then it says, yet hath he not root in himself, but endureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of the word, by and by he is offended. So it was all good until you felt that rejection. And the word is what causes the rejection. You read in John the 17th chapter, he said, I've given them that word, and the world hath hated them. See, the world doesn't like you if you're a believer. But now let's go to another place here. Let's take it to the Old Testament. Peace to you, Brother Anthony. It's good to see you there, good brother. Peace to you, Silent Eye. So now, this is something that people, the question is one is as if, think about what Christ went through. Because, the Lord will deliver you. See, let's read a little bit about what our Messiah, the one we're supposed to be disciples of. Let's see what he went through. But let's read it in the Psalms. He says, this is David. He wrote in Psalms the 16th division. He said, I will bless the Lord who hath given me counsel. My reins also instruct me in the night seasons. I'm in verse 8 now. I have set the Lord always before me. Because he has at my right hand, I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad and my glory rejoiceth. My flesh also shall rest in hope. Now wait a minute. What is he talking about? He's talking about death. He said, but I'm going to rest. I'm going to die with this hope. What's the hope? For thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One to see corruption. The sign that he was the Messiah was that Whereas Jonah is in Matthew the 12th chapter. For as Jonah was in the whale's belly for 3 days and 3 nights, so shall the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. He had this hope. You read it also in John the 17th chapter. He said, "Oh, my Father, glorify me with the glory I had with thee before the world was." But he knew he had to die first. He said, "Thou wilt show me the path of life. In thy presence is fullness of joy. At thy right hand there are pleasures forevermore." See, you have to go through the night to get to that point. You have to go through the pain. You have to go through the rejection. You might even have to go through imprisonment and even death to get to that point. But he can strengthen you. As Paul said, "I count it all but done that I might win Christ." You have to be willing to give it all up. It's not something you can just necessarily be comfortable on this walk. He told you, "Take up your cross and follow me." So you really have to rearrange your outlook on the word and what he's promising you at the end. Yes, but you're gonna have to go through some things. You're gonna have to go through these things. Let's go to Matthew the 19th chapter. This is not an easy walk. And that's the misconception that many people have. They read certain things and they say, "Oh, okay." Not really. Matter of fact, let's go here and then we're going to go to another place, actually. Peace to you, Sister Sharon. This is Matthew the 19th chapter and verse 27. It says, "Then answered Peter and said unto him, Behold," he's talking to the Messiah. He's talking to Jesus. It says, "Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore?" He said, "Well, we gave it all up. What are we going to get?" In verse 28, "And Jesus said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel." Peace to you, Brother Joseph. It's good to see you there, brother. He says, "And everyone that hath forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or fathers, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold and shall inherit everlasting life." So they're going to get everlasting life, but notice they had to give up something. See, you have to change your outlook on this thing. This is the last place, Hebrews. Let's pick it up in the book of Hebrews. We're in chapter 11 of Hebrews. Chapter 11 of Hebrews and verse 1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things for the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good report. Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. By faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it being dead yet speaking." I'm going to skip down because he talks about all these things that were done by faith. Verse 7, "By faith Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, preparing an ark to the saving of his house, by the which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith." Verse 23, "By faith Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. By faith Moses, when he would come years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer the affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasure of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward." And understand that was even Jesus who Moses was communing with in the mountain. He says, "I am that I am." That was Jesus. That's why you read it in John where he says, "Before Abraham was, I am." That was Jesus back then. He said, "By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king. He endured as seeing him who is invisible." Verse 29, "By faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, which the Egyptians are saying to do was drowned." Verse 30, "By faith the walls of Jericho fell down after they were compassed about 7 days." You see all these things that are done through faith. He said in verse 32, and what shall I say more? Or more say? And what shall I more say? For the time would fail me. I mean, I don't have enough time to tell of Gideon and of Barak and of Samson and of Jephthah, of David, who killed Goliath. Also in Samuel and of the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens, of foreigners. You see what they did? So the Lord helped them. But listen to what else some other people had to experience. He said, women received their dead raised to life again, and others were tortured, not accepting deliverance that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover, bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned. They were sawn asunder. That means cut in half. Were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, and tormented. Those are the ones of faith. So when you say, why is there so many promises to help if he's not going to help? Well, he can help you, but that help doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. It can mean that you can have the strength to endure. It says, of whom the world was not worthy. These referring to those who were stoned, who were sawn asunder, tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. See, it's not always that you come out of the furnace unburned. No, you could, as they said, we know our God is able, but if not, we will not bow down. See, they were willing to be obedient, and just so happened they would deliver. See, so you have to really change your way of thinking about this thing. People, even people that have knowledge of the wilderness, they never think, man, maybe I might not make it. Maybe I might not make it. I might want to get to the wilderness, but I might not make it. Maybe I'm one of the ones that dies during great tribulation. See, they don't think like that. They just know it's going to be wilderness. As if even going to the wilderness is going to be an easy thing. You think you have to leave all the amenities of civilization? Oh, yeah, you got to think about it. How many people are you leaving behind? That's an act of faith. You going out in the wilderness? People don't think you're crazy. See, people never think that way. It's easy. See, this little rejection that we getting from family and friends and people on our job whispering, that's nothing compared to what's about to take place. See, it's all fun and games. Now, it's a game. Now, look on YouTube. Look on YouTube. And see the things that people say. See the things that people are doing. The feast is a party. It's all fun and games. Let this persecution come down. And you're going to see who got faith. You're going to see some people go astray. Yes. Absolutely. It's a time of temptation. He said they were stoned, they were sawn asunder, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and in mountains, and in dens and caves of the earth. And these all, having obtained a good report through faith, received not the promise. God having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect. All right. So peace to you, Sister Ruth and Sister Sharon. All praise to the Most High. Yeah, that's good to hear that you appreciate a man's point of view in the brethren's form. I just received a message today. They want a woman's point of view. It says brethren's form in the title. But nevertheless, I wanted to keep it on our minds, brothers and sisters, that you're going to have to give up something for this walk. You know, you're going to give up family and friends. You're going to have to give up some things. And so you keep on living. We're getting closer to the time of our return of our Savior. And when humanity comes to that point, just before his return, you had great tribulation. And great tribulation begins with the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place. That's when the man of sin, the son of perdition, he's going to stand in the temple of God showing himself that he is God. And we understand that that man that's going to do that is coming out of the office of the Pope. Okay? So with that, brothers and sisters, it is always my prayer that you were edified